Toxic femininity should be just as much of a thing as toxic masculinity. Not all women are toxic, just like not all men are, but it seems like we turn a blind eye when women start behaving in toxic ways. Whether it's uncontrollable bitching habits, or when they start judging women and men based on what they're wearing and their aesthetics. Some women tend to be a lot more superficial when it comes to what they look for in appearances, e.g. height, weight, etc. It also seems to be accepted by society a lot more than when men start demanding women to look and act a certain way. Another irritating thing is that women tend to stick to the same topics. It's like they're so brainwashed with their priorities. The narrative that your worth is based on your appearance seems to be growing with the age of Instagram, which tends to be dominated by half-naked women constantly seeking validation by how many likes they get. Disclaimer: I'm a woman who has a lot of girlfriends. Maybe I just have shitty friends, but it seems to be a growing trend on who can be more superficial and shallow these days. There isn't toxic masculinity, there isn't toxic femininity. There is toxicity. From System of a Down. ITT, people mistaking toxic masculinity as men being toxic. I agree with your title, but I'm pretty sure the proper definition of toxic masculinity is being self-destructive in efforts to be masculine, and most of the internet uses the phrase grossly incorrectly to describe an asshole with a penis. So in my eyes, toxic femininity would be things like eating disorders to be skinny. Avoiding sex you want to not be called a slut. Not asking for a raise or a promotion to not be called bitchy, bossy. Avoiding high-paying dirty jobs. Not asking men out because they should be the pursuer. I agree with you that toxic femininity should be a thing, but I think there's something you're missing. Toxic masculinity is not just men being toxic, it's men being toxic because they're following society's script for them with too much zeal. It comes from what they're told to do to be men. So toxic femininity should only apply to toxic behaviors that come directly from how women are told to act, like how women consistently say they have lower confidence and less ambition in the workplace, how the study that coined the term mansplaining actually found it was most often for other women to interrupt women, etc. Okay people, toxic masculinity is not a trait people possess. It doesn't mean that a person is toxic and a man. It is a term used for negative societal standards of masculinity, like the idea that boys shouldn't show emotions other than anger, or the idea that boys need to be violent to be manly. Toxic femininity exists as well, and it's the same thing, just for standards of femininity. It's just that you don't really hear the term as much because the only time you really hear people talking about these standards is when people talk about violence of some sort, and occasionally when talking about male suicide, and those aren't exactly negative standards of feminine behavior, since those expectations are usually that a person should be passive or timid. That isn't what toxic masculinity is. SMH. Toxic masculinity are gender roles assigned to men that are not conducive to good mental health. Toxic femininity would be gender roles assigned to women that are not conducive to good mental health. So, toxic femininity would be Betty Draper trying to play the role of a housewife even though she is becoming a pill-popping alcoholic to avoid the misery. It does exist. It's just mostly displayed by people like Karen. I hated high school so much because of women like that. Thank goodness we didn't have Instagram back then. One interesting trend I have discovered, since I moved to an affluent suburban area, is that some women who appear, at first glance, to be proponents of toxic femininity are actually victims of narcissistic abuse. I have an acquaintance, in her early 50s, who pays for eyelash extensions and panics if she gains a pound. She isn't vain at all. She complains if she has to wear makeup or dress up, but her idiot husband says he will leave her if she starts to look old. He's older than she is. She has been brainwashed into believing that she and her kids will have to take up residence in a cardboard box if she eats a Twinkie, and nothing I say can convince her otherwise. She is constantly posting things to social media so her husband can see that she is still attractive. He says it's important for his personal brand. Meanwhile, her husband has affairs with women half his age whom he meets at the gym. She knows this. She still won't leave him. It's heartbreaking. Toxic humanity. Women seem to be brainwashed with their priorities. Okay, sis. Displaying some fine toxic behavior right here. Toxic masculinity doesn't say men are toxic, it's the toxic idea that men have to fit a certain standard in order to be classed as real men. It's not specific behavior from men. The equivalent wouldn't be women being nasty to other women, it'd be society expecting women to act a certain way in order to be classed as a real woman, and we got rid of that using feminism. If men actually took some time to look into toxic masculinity instead of constantly going what about women, maybe it'd get fixed. Jesus, mate, I don't know how often toxic masculinity needs to be explained, but this isn't what it is. Toxic masculinity isn't men are behaving in a toxic way. Toxic masculinity isn't men are more likely to behave in a toxic way. Toxic masculinity is our cultural view of masculinity is toxic. None of the issues you've talked about is how the feminine ideal is toxic. No one thinks uncontrollable bitching habits or judging people is the feminine ideal. Every fucking week with this brain dead take. You are describing misogyny. People don't know proper definition of toxic masculinity. Don't make a post about something you don't understand. This isn't unpopular, it's misinformation. That behavior you described is definitely toxic as hell, but I don't know if it would be classified as toxic femininity. Toxic masculinity, even though I think the term itself is dumb and misleading, is when a guy does stupid shit because he feels like his masculinity is threatened. It can range from something as trivial as not wanting to wear pink, to something as severe as abusing their girlfriend/wife. Most men who have toxic masculinity aren't consciously doing it, and I would argue that it's not their fault that they have that mindset. Boys are raised to see femininity as a bad thing and to be a man, acting like a girl is bad, act rough and tough, and to bottle up their emotions because it's more manly, and not gay. Oh, and the dumb boys will be boys phrase, to describe boys doing god-awful things because that's just being a boy. Which is downright offensive because that's saying that all boys are dumb or mean. Toxic masculinity arises from misogyny, whether conscious or not, because they grew up believing that feminine things are bad and should be frowned upon. Toxic femininity doesn't seem too common to me because girls are actually encouraged nowadays to be a man and not wear makeup, not dress up, enjoy gorging themselves with food, go fishing, dislike shopping, play video games, and be one of the boys. This is also because femininity is seen as a bad thing because of misogyny. You might have seen examples of that with all those stupid memes and posts like other girls wear makeup and go shopping, I like going mudding in my truck and going hunting, and they try to imply that wearing makeup and going shopping is bad or less respectable than the other things, which isn't even true. There's nothing wrong with being like other girls, because there's nothing wrong with other girls. Femininity isn't bad, and neither is masculinity. And men and women should be allowed to wear, say, and do traditionally feminine things. Toxic femininity, I assume, would be the opposite of toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is viewing femininity as something to be avoided and having very unhealthy mindsets involving being a man is better and we should try our hardest to be the manliest men. So toxic femininity, I guess, would be trying as hard as possible to be very feminine and look down on things that are traditionally masculine, and shaming both men and women for not being feminine. And oh, my daughter sexually harassed/raped your son? Oh, girls will be girls. I haven't seen too much of that. Edit, scratch that last paragraph. You/the authors made some really good points about what toxic femininity is in this comment. https://www. reddit.com/r/unpopularopinion/comments/gnv83/toxic_femininity_should_be_as_much_b_frcg46x/ UTM_source equals share and UTM_medium equals iOS_app and UTM_name equals iOSF. That slipped my mind.